Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Cecilia Iglesias. I am president of the Parent Union. Thank you for joining us today. Today we have a special guest. Her name is Heather Martinson, and she is from Celebration Education, and she's going to be sharing with us the option of homeschooling for your children. And she's going to be explaining to us more the process and also laws that have been put in place that are affecting this option. So, Heather?
But then 15 years ago, I started Celebration Education, which is a program where children who are homeschooled come to us for classes. But I want to share that there are many ways to learn, and schooling is just one of those options. I am really frustrated when I hear about kids that have been doing Zoom school for an entire year, especially because my approach to learning is where, as much as possible, we get the kids out into real life. And I like this comparison between Zoom on a computer to Zoom with a micro or a lens, looking and zooming in on nature and the real thing and touching and smelling and experiencing the learning, as opposed to being online, which to me is just like the worst way to educate a child. And my concern is not for the academics of the children. I know, because of my approach to education, I know that kids can learn at any time. There have been many cases when kids, for some reason or another, are fall behind in school, a year behind or even more than a year behind in school. But these kids are able to catch up in a matter of weeks, and I've seen it happen over and over and over. That's not my big concern right now. My big concern is the psychological damage that some children are enduring right now, and that's what breaks my heart. And that's what that type of damage is what can last well past the pandemic. So I want as many people as possible to know that they have options. And also, because learning is more important than schooling. Schooling is what you do when you're in a school. Learning is what you can do anywhere. So reading, social studies, STEM, math, writing, all of these things can be learned as a part of a natural, normal, everyday life. Learning can happen anytime and anywhere. You don't even need a classroom or a Zoom call to learn. You don't even need a credential teacher, because we're working one-on-one with a child is more powerful than any amount of degrees that a teacher might have. And if you have questions about any of this, be sure to ask me, because I can help you through these things. Because I know that children like to learn unless school gets in the way. When kids are always asking you questions, you might be annoyed by it, but it's proof that your children like to learn. They still like learning, and that they want to know more. A long time before the internet existed, or before even schooling in many cases, many people were learning through their own experiences, through their own curiosities, learning when and wherever they wanted to, whether by choice or circumstance. These pictures represent many of those people, such as Thomas Edison, Alexander Hamilton, Abraham Lincoln, Claude Monet, Florence Nightingale, Booker T. Washington, George Washington, Phyllis Wheatley, Laura Ingalls Wilder, Orville and Wilbur Wright, Susan B. Anthony, Charlie Chaplin, Charles Dickens, Albert Einstein, Benjamin Franklin, the Williams sisters. All of these people were educated outside of a classroom. And they were fortunate enough to get the education that matched their talents and allowed them to increase their genius. So they got their education through non-traditional means. They skipped the classroom. And because of that, they had the opportunity to expand on the things that they're really good at. So by leaving a classroom, you're not giving up anything. You're actually gaining a lot more, because I believe that every child has genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will live its whole life believing that it's stupid. So I like to find what's the strengths of each of the children. I homeschooled my kids because I wanted them to have the opportunity to learn from more than one teacher, one textbook, especially nowadays when what the teacher says somehow is true and you can't disagree with the teacher, right? But I wanted my children to question the teacher. I wanted my children to question the textbook. I wanted them to have the opportunity to learn from libraries, from people who have been there. Wherever they wanted to go to learn, they could. But now my kids are all grown now, and one is graduating from college. The second one is graduating this year. Not that college is the only indicator of success, but that I know that it's a lot of people recognize that it does have value. So I point that out. So, but my kids weren't perfect. There's no such thing as perfect kids. But my kid on the autism spectrum wrote volumes of journals before graduating from high school at 17. My dyslexic child, when he was a teenager, he loved reading Steinbeck. My child, who taught himself how to read when he was 10, and he had read stacks of books by the time he was 11. He could stack them up taller than himself. My child that taught himself to read when he was 4 chose to study the elements at age of 7. And these are all accomplishments that my kids would not have had the chance to do if they were in a traditional school. So personally, I believe in the near future, there will be many more students in schools that are less and less, that look less and less like the schools that we grew up in. Traditional schools, hybrid schools, home schools, pod schools, micro schools, charter schools, so many different ways that we can educate children. Once we start thinking outside the box, right? When we start thinking that school is just one way to educate a child, there are so many, many, many options. So I want to talk about really quick about how you can homeschool your children. If you feel like you need to get them out of the school that they're in right now, you completely have options. As a matter of fact, you can, in a day, if your child has a bad day on Zoom, they can quit that school and start homeschooling in the same day. And I can help you do it if you want me to. But let me just go over generally what your options are. Just for a little bit of background, before the pandemic, there was a homeschooling option through charter schools. And most people that homeschooled went through charter schools because the charter schools have credentialed teachers, they provide materials, and they even pay for classes that your children could take with other kids. So, and that was a very popular way to homeschool. But unfortunately, last summer, our own legislature put through a law. They just kind of pushed it through that made it so that all of the schools, charter schools and local schools, whatever funding that they had for last school year is the same for this school year, essentially putting a cap on all of the charter schools and the number of kids that they can have in their schools, which what it boils down to is that all of these people who were suddenly needing distance learning, they had to stay with their local school who had no idea how to do distance learning. They didn't have the chance to jump into these new school environments that are fully experienced at distance learning and can get you going instantly and give you all the resources you need. They know what they're doing. So I think it was a way to preserve the corner school, but unfortunately it was about the school, not the kids. Of course, the children are more important than the schools, right? So, if somebody wants to start homeschooling now, you can apply to the charter schools, but not many students are getting in because they have that cap. But that doesn't close the door on you. You can homeschool if you want to. Before charter schools even existed, back in the 80s, my mom started homeschooling my younger siblings, and she did it through what's called a private school affidavit, and it's still available today. A private school affidavit is a form that you fill out online, and basically you're just letting the state know that you are establishing your own home as your own private school. And when you do that, the great thing is that private schools can set their own standards. And so you don't necessarily have to follow the state standards. If you want to do something custom for your child, you have the flexibility to do it. I'd never used a charter school for my kids. I liked the flexibility of doing the private school affidavit route, where we were all on our own. So we didn't get the funds for curriculum or for classes or anything, but we really enjoyed our freedom. We didn't have to report to anyone, and I could work directly with the child with no middleman, right? I could give my kids what they needed. So that's, if you need help with a private school affidavit, I recommend you visit the CaliforniaHomeschool.net website. They have a step-by-step walkthrough for the private school affidavit, and all you have to do is fill it out. It's not an application. You just need to let the state know that you are now a private school. So as soon as you file that, you are a private school. Actually, even before you file it, as soon as you decide that you're a private school, you are a private school. And the affidavit is just letting the state know and affirming to them that that's what you're doing. And then you can pull your child out of school. You can tell the school that you are transferring your child into a private school. If you don't want to have to say homeschooling, that's fine. That legally, the school doesn't have to ask for any information about the school that you are transferring your children into. Not every school knows that. And so because of that, many of the schools will ask you for something for more information about this new school. If that's the case with you, you can print your private school affidavit form that you've already filled out, and you can give that to the school, and then they have nothing. There's nothing else that they can ask for. That's all there is to it. So what I love is this gives you so much freedom. If your child really needs help right now, if your child is getting near the end of the year and they haven't learned anything all year, pull them out of school, spend an hour and a half a day with them, reading, writing, and do math, and you will get them ahead of their peers by the end of the school year. I promise you can do it. The great thing is that when kids are in the right learning environments, they will amaze us all. There is so much good in store for them when you give them the chance. That's what I want to encourage everyone to look for and find the things that your children need. We don't need to put up with something that's inadequate for your kids. You can find what they need. Don't give up until you do find it. It's out there. If your child is struggling, it's because they're in a bad fit. If your child doesn't want to do schoolwork, it's because the schoolwork that they're given is a bad fit. There's good stuff out there. And if you want more information about homeschooling, you're welcome to contact me. CelebrationEducation.com is the company that I started back in 2006, and we've had classes all over Southern California. Right now, though, I am also putting together a new website that is learningoutsidethebox.com. And through this website, anyone anywhere can start their own Celebration Education group where you have access to the lessons, the support, the business resources, so that you can start your group and you don't have to you can be up and running in just a couple weeks with other families, so your children are on their own if you want to. So there's a lot of options for you, and you can homeschool. You can find other families to do a pod school with. There's so many ways that you can do this.
Again, Heather, for being open to discussing and sharing with parents on how to navigate this complex system of, because, they get this, some people can get discouraged because it's so much information, but it's easy once you're able to understand how it works. So, so for today, I want to thank you all for joining us. I'm Cecilia Iglesias, President of the Parent Union, with Heather Martinson from Celebration Education.